We're embarking upon our 50-year anniversary. So when I was promoted, I was the first Black female officer in operations at the company. Now, that is great, but when you look at how long we have been in business, to say so where we have some, oh, that is so often, you know when I'm saying some, when I say some, who I'm talking about, this is a great banner to wear. I don't wear the banner for that greatness. I wear the banner because there's so many others that can do what I do. They just need the opportunity. So when we talk about why I do the work that I do, I want to do it well so that I can make sure that those sidebar conversations that say we or Black women can't do, that I set a foundation that shows we can and we do it better than everybody else.
Thank you so much for that inspiring story. And, you know, we always say, you know, do people still stay at their jobs for this amount of time, this amount of time? Here we are. Here's a prime example right here. If you're working in a healthy, positive, and psychologically safe workplace, right, it is possible. Thank you. And then last but not least, our superstar in the room, obviously. Everybody came to see her. Audria Pendergrass-Lee, tell us about your journey to becoming the VP of Talent Acquisition and Chief Diversity Officer at FINRA.
You know, it's interesting. I had a journey that, frankly, if you had looked at how, you know, I went to Fayetteville State University, an HBCU, in Fayetteville, North Carolina, Bronco Pride. Anybody? Right? Thank you, thank you. I left and went to the University of South Carolina. I got a degree in political science. I thought I was going to be a lawyer. I went into the Army Reserves. I worked for lawyers, and I was like, I want to be one of y'all. And I like the lawyers in my life, right? But I didn't want to do that. And so I will tell anybody, I'm a program and project manager that just happens to specialize in diversity, equity, inclusion. And by extension, the work of talent acquisition, finding early career, mid-career, executive level talent, that when you start with the foundation of we are looking for diverse talent in all the ways that that means, it's a natural kind of pull together. I'll tell you though, you started the question with, why do you do this work? So I will tell you that around 12 o'clock today, East Coast time, I became a brand new auntie for like, I don't know, the 8th or 9th time. I have a little niece.
Congratulations.
A little niece named Aria. And that's just Audria without the U and the D, but that's not what her parents said, right? And I do the work because I need Aria to not have to have the struggles and need to endure, right, as she goes into the workplace, what we have seen and endured as women, as Black women, as women from wherever fill in the blank you're from. And so that's why I do the work.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, paving the way for future generations. And if you think about what we have been through as Black women since the beginning of time, but essentially the roller coaster ride, I'm going to call it, as we move into our next segment over the past couple of years. So as we recall in 2020, after the murder of George Floyd, many organizations made a commitment to removing barriers that we have experienced for advancement and opportunity in the workplace. And with that, they created chief diversity officer roles in some organizations. They've created DEI departments. And we felt a sense of hope that coming off the pandemic, as we went through the pandemic, that we would be working in a more inclusive environment where we felt not only a sense of belonging, but a sense of hope that those barriers would be removed so that we could advance, have opportunity, and work in safe work environments. But recent studies have shown us, have come out over the past several weeks, informing us that as the economy has downturned, and we're starting to see layoffs across organizations, that the diversity roles that were created in 2020 are the first ones to go. In fact, statistics and research are already showing us that the attrition rate for those in DEI roles are already much higher than any other role that's non-DEI. That's a startling statistic when we think about that. So as we look at layoffs and other things that are happening in the workplace, I want to ask my panel here, why do you think those roles are the first to go as organizations consider what's important to them? What message is that sending to their people of color in their communities, women and other marginalized groups that they made these commitments to? Anybody want to go first? I see you like you got something to say. So we'll start with you, Audrey.
So I always have something to say. But what I'll share is that leadership matters. Yeah. And if your organizations are doing this work as a reaction to George Floyd, then, you know, I'm going to choose my words wisely here, but they weren't serious about this work to begin with, right? And so I'm very proud to say that I joined FINRA to build out the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion program. It'll be 14 years on March 16th. And when I joined, I didn't join, they weren't looking for me or someone like me because they were in trouble. They made an intentional choice to build diversity, equity, and inclusion into their long-term business strategy. And if your organizations aren't doing that, then of course you're gonna see that when times get tough and you need to contract, that you're gonna think of diversity, equity, and inclusion as ancillary. Because in June of 2020, everybody was in crisis mode, right? And they didn't know what to do. They didn't have a person sitting at the table who could say, hey, in this crisis mode, here's the playbook. They didn't have one, right? Again, very proud to say that at my organization, when George Floyd happened, in the middle of a pandemic where we were all at home, so we saw it, it wasn't that it wasn't happening before, right?
Absolutely not.
But we were focused on it because we were sitting consuming more social media and TV than we should have been, right? Because we didn't have a choice. And when that happened, my organization stopped. And there are women sitting on this first 2 rows from FINRA who within days had the audience with our CEO. Our CEO had an audience with our board, and we were given not just money, but time to create a racial justice task force. And 3 years in, we have not only received recommendations for improvements in our workforce, our community, and in our industry, but we've acted on them. We've acted on them. And our board is like, let's keep going.
Wow.
Right, thank you,
Wow.
and let's keep going. And so make sure you're holding your leaders accountable for being able to explain why they're doing diversity, equity, and inclusion work. Because if they can explain it, there's no such thing as we don't need this as we go through tough financial times.
That's right. I love that. And you know, when you think about the strategy that FINRA put in place, and we're trying to distinguish between genuine and performative efforts, when you're putting budget behind your DEI efforts and not expecting people of color, Black women especially, to do invisible tasks, right, of creating your strategy for you, leading programs, et cetera, with no budget, right? That's when you can distinguish between the performative efforts and the genuine, the real efforts in organizations, right? So, yes, go ahead.
One of the reasons I think that it has happened because a lot of businesses do not value the financial benefit of diversity in the company. There are so many that think about it as a buzzword, or it's just this group of people that just want something because they want it, or we're talking about reparations and things that didn't have anything to do with that. And that's not true, because if you want to talk about discretionary effort and how, because you all know if anybody came into work and just did what they were supposed to do, no company will be successful, so we have to have the discretionary effort. And one thing about leadership, when you're going to lead people, you have to touch their hearts first. So to touch somebody's heart, you got to think about what is important to them, not just in the workplace, outside of the workplace. So in order to understand that, because you have all different people in the workplace from different places, different cultures, and to understand that, you got to have people at the decision-making table that are there that can tell you and that can be intentional about what it is until a company gets committed enough to make that decision. It will still continue to be in the ups and downs, and when we have the George Floyds, everybody's all excited, everybody is so emotional, I want to do this and I want to do that, but you need to keep it going. So I think that a lot of it has happened because it wasn't in your face anymore.
Exactly, exactly. And Tiffany, I want you to add on to that because your role specifically ties into a strategic part of your organizations to sustaining these efforts.
Well, we're glad that that did not affect us. So our Global Diversity and Inclusion Officer and Corporate Social Responsibility Officer, Cynthia Bowman, no relation, but our colleague has been in place. She succeeded another woman who was doing it. And what we don't believe that you have to start out with is diversity. You have to begin with inclusion. You have to make sure that the people that come to work every day, that carry out the mission of your organization, can feel included. So if you're not starting with inclusion and you begin with diversity, you might have a tougher road to hoe, as my mom would say, than you would if you began with the inclusion. The other thing is you have to bring all the voices to the table. You can't say, give us this, give us that, because then it feels like to the others that you're taking something from them. So you have to begin with the why. Why does diversity and inclusion matter? Why does it make us a better place to work? Why does this serve our clients? How does this support our teammates? And why does it support the investment in our communities? Because without our clients being successful, without our teammates feeling that they can be successful, and without our communities thriving, we inherently will not be successful. So as I was sitting in Detroit, which is where I live and raise my family, and watching George Floyd's murder on the streets of my hometown of Minneapolis, I was devastated. And the fact that all these companies then put in place DEI officers, I was like, great, how does that change things? That is a performative action, as you mentioned, and until you put the resources, the tools, the metrics, the measurements, the inspection, the people, the processes, the places around that work, it doesn't matter. Having an officer that just does that, it doesn't gain you momentum or movement. You have to have a team of people that can do it, that are inspecting it and expecting it. Because just having one person like, oh, I have the role, you can't go and change the culture of an organization by yourself. You have to have a whole force behind you and with you of people that this serves, but also allies that support the work.
I love that. I love that. And I think you've touched exactly on a couple of points of why we have seen so many DEI initiatives fail, which I recoined the phrase DEI to dead end initiatives because they were going nowhere. And there's been a lot of theories about that, and you all have touched on some of those. You know, putting just one person in place, expecting them to make all of this change without budget, without a team, without commitment from leadership, without accountability. The list goes on and on. But there's one controversial topic out there that I keep reading about, and I want to get your thoughts on this because I'm kind of on the fence. All right, y'all ready to have a real conversation about making change? Because that question or that theme that I've been reading about is some people believe that DEI efforts have failed because statistics show that 80% of the people who've been placed in those roles are not people of color.
I don't think that's why they fail. It's alone. They might fail because you don't have somebody who's maybe walked the path and maybe can't stand up the right topics and subjects. But it has to be the people. First of all, it has to be a business strategy. For us, diversity and inclusion is not about just doing diversity and inclusion. We understand it is a financial decision. If our company from top to bottom does not look like the people and clients and communities we serve, we can close the doors tomorrow. We have to have, well, and the other thing is that it is a statistic that the people who are going to populate the halls of our company and deliver for clients are not going to look like they do today. So if we're not preparing for the workforce to come and work with us, for us, in our companies, then we might as well close the doors as well. So we know it is a business case. We are beyond diversity, and inclusion as a topic or a catchword. We understand it is a business strategy and it is a business imperative.
All right, and I see my other panelists disagreed as well.
I totally agree. It's a business decision. And when you make it about the business, then you remove all the personal pieces of it. And you don't have to get into where I don't understand why you want this and I don't understand. When you connect that dot from the business and how it affects the bottom line, then that's what's important about it. So it doesn't matter who's leading it. It's about somebody that has the voice, somebody that's willing to step out there and do what needs to be done to push the effort forward.
Exactly.
Yeah, for me, I totally disagree that it matters what vessel you're in to do this work. What I know is that if you have a knee-jerk reaction and you need to hire someone quick, you're not testing for the competencies and the skills that a chief diversity officer needs, right? Too often, right, through history, I've seen chief diversity officer roles in other organizations be a place where you send your retiring folks who need a few more years in the organization, right? Or a place where, hey, this person did really great over here, I'm not gonna give them any training. I'm not gonna send them, right, to get schooling on this work, but I'm gonna just say, you did great over there, you'll be a superstar here, make it happen, figure it out. This is not a figure it out job, right? I would not go into a courtroom and say, oh, I'm real smart, I'll figure this out, right? It takes skills and training, and the fact that we have not recognized that in some organizations, and it's a popularity contest, or it's a let me put you here contest, or frankly, sometimes it's a I don't believe in this anyway, and so I don't mind setting it up, because now I can say we tried this. It didn't work for us.
I want to add one more thing to that too. A lot of times it is the thought that it has to be the black person that leads it.
Right.
And in a lot of instances, a lot of things that she said, but it's also to put that person there to sanction everything that you want to do.
That's right.
Because I have a diversity person that's the head of diversity, so I'm doing all this stuff and they're not saying anything, so it's all good.
Right.
So and then it's not giving the voice to the person, and then you've got the person that's in that role that doesn't have the support, doesn't have, I don't want to say not necessarily the courage, but hasn't been given the know-how, the tools, and everything else to get, because it's an afterthought. It's that diversity person that's not at the table when decisions are being made about the business.
Exactly, exactly. And I've straddled the fence on it, and one of the reasons why I believe that we need diversity in diversity is because, let's think about a house. If you move into a new house and it's faulty, it's got leaks, you got plumbing issues, it's got a bad foundation, a lot of times it would be helpful if the person that built that house would come and help to resolve those leaks and foundations. So for so long, we were kept out of conversations about business, right? We didn't know the playbook. And, I attended a session earlier. We talked about knowing the players, knowing the characters, knowing the playbook, knowing the rules, are there rules, etc. Why not invite the people in that have essentially put up these barriers for us to come and tell us how to dismantle them? Right? Because we certainly did not do it. So again, there is, arguments on both sides, but as you have, really strongly articulated here, is that it's a business case, right? And it's who's qualified to do the job, who has...
And are they putting resources behind it?
And putting resources behind it, right? And not just that performative effort or performative title that we have seen in so many cases here. So a renowned DEI expert, and we're going to move to the good news in just a minute, okay? Because we got to start with the problem, right? The needs assessment, then we're going to move to the good news. So a renowned DEI expert shared that he believed that some of the reasons that our initiatives are failing is because we're in the old school, we're approaching it from the old school affirmative action, equal employment opportunity, EEO standpoint. And when I think about what that means, right, it means affirmative actions is numbers, right? You're checking boxes, you're saying, I have this much percentage of diversity, okay, done. And EEO is regulatory, right? I'm ensuring that there's no disparate treatment, no, disparate impact within my organization. And yes, I used to be a labor and employment law attorney. You said you found out before. I found out after I graduated from law school and accumulated a whole lot of debt that I didn't want to be a lawyer either. So I wish I had known you earlier. But anyway, enough about that. And this expert suggests that we should be approaching it from an ESG. And if you're unfamiliar what that stands for, right? It's for environmental, social, and governance. I see you mouthing that along with me, right? But it's assuming there's someone in the room that doesn't know. How has the organization's policies and practices impacted the environment, inside and outside of the workplace? And what are the social consequences of the organization's performance and the governance over the organization's decisions and the ramifications of those decisions? That's ESG. So I'm interested to hear your thoughts. One of the reasons is because we're approaching it from old school, check the box, affirmative action, EEO, and we should be transitioning to this model. Do you agree with that? Or what are your other thoughts? Or are there some other things that we should know about to help us to move these initiatives forward?
I think that has a lot to do with it because there's a lot of old school thinking that thinks that it's just about the number, and in some instances, we already got one of you, so we don't need it anymore, we don't need this. So I do think we need to move in that direction. If you're going to talk about the people that are coming into the workplace that are very socially conscious, they're very conscious about the environment, and if you're building a workforce and you want people to know that you care about them, you've got to deal with the things that are important to them, the social, the environmental, and also when we talk about the governance, and I certainly agree that it's not an affirmative action thing and that it's not just a number, but you can't manage what you can't measure. So if you can't look and see what your numbers are, I'm not saying take that number and say go out and get 1, 2, and 3, but if you see that your people are not looking like what your organization looks like, then your efforts need to be in the direction of that. It's not saying go and hire somebody just because they are this. What are your efforts to make sure? So then you have to question yourself. How am I carrying myself? And then for those of us that are in these roles, we have to be intentional. And sometimes, you're by yourself, but you have to make that decision that I'm going to speak up. And I have been in so many where I am the only one throughout, I'll tell you, when I lived in Colorado, I didn't see another black person. I got home and looked at a picture. So you have to make a decision yourself. How am I going to approach this? How am I going to make a difference? And one of the things that I do now, certain situations may be tough, and I just say, okay, Crystal, this is going to either be a lesson or a blessing. So move forward and do what you need to do because you know what you're here for. I'm not here just for me.
Right.
I'm here for the people that have to come behind me. So there are several people that were before me that did this, and I've been given this opportunity. So whatever it takes, because yes, the business has to be profitable. I'm here to help the business be profitable, but also to have that voice to make sure that people side of it, that diversity side of it, what makes the business prosper, that voice is heard as well.
Yep.
I don't think, Natasha, that like any of my teammates care what we call it. They just want to know that we're a great place to work for everybody. I don't think anyone cares if you come to work here and that we have great talent and we have a great place to work and that we can retain people. None of the users of the experience care what you title it, as long as you're doing the work. So I'm proud to say that my 40 colleagues right here, y'all raise your hand.
All right.
These beautiful black women here who deliver financial education, and by the way, if you need a slot, you can still get one, talk to them. I would trust any of them with the work that I do, but I know they can bring their best self to work every day because our thought is not just to have diversity, but to practice inclusion and be a great place to work for everybody. And when it is that, then we all succeed.
Yeah.
Okay. So this time has gone by very, very quickly. So we only have about 3 more minutes because I want to get some of your questions. So to wrap it up, I want each of you to spend 1 minute, because we got 3 minutes, telling us, for both DEI practitioners in the audience and those who are not DEI practitioners, because we all play a role in cultivating cultures of inclusion and belonging. Doesn't matter what your title is, right? What's a key takeaway that they can take back to their organizations to either build, to either sustain, or gain momentum in their DEI strategy? 1 minute. All right, Audrey, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I just want to start making sure that everybody in this room, whether you do DEI work or not, right, understands that this work is measurable, right? And it's measurable by representation, of course, right? But it's also measurable through engagement surveys and other tools to understand how your workforce is doing. And so from my perspective, right, 2 years ago, I actually have about 16 women who are sitting in the audience today. Back in the summer of 2020, we ran a culture survey, and what we found was that African American women were experiencing the workplace at a statistically significant rate less positively than every other intersection of person, right? So it wasn't just by race and gender, it was by age breakdown, by supervisory work, that sort of thing. And so what we understood was that as you think about EEO, because you brought that up, right? EEO says you cannot show preference or dispreference for any group, right? But what equity tells us is you have to take care of those who need the care and feeding right now. And what you implement for that group is going to amplify your ability to have inclusion, discretionary effort, more engagement, right, towards the mission of your organization. And so we started a program called Connections. And Connections was about the care and building up of these African American women leaders in our organization so that they felt whole, so that they felt valued, so that they felt they were receiving the professional development care that they may have been missing, right? Unintentionally, I'm sure, but the data doesn't lie.
Right.
And so if you have not, right, found ways to understand how people are experiencing your organization with all those cuts of data, you're missing out on the ability to be able to measure sustained progress. And what we've seen in those 2 years is a definite increase in the experience of African American women overall in our organization. What we have seen is that people in our organization who participate in diversity, equity, and inclusion programs are more likely to be positive about their work environment because of the work they're doing and because they see that the organization is investing in them. And so just going full circle, if we don't make sure that we understand why we're doing this work and we don't have the ability or the people in place who can have the tough conversations, who can advocate on behalf of the folks in the organization who need that equitable lift, then we're not going to succeed with diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. So I'm optimistic.
All right, thank you so much. I love optimism. So, all right, I know we run out of time.
Yeah, one thing I would say is, in doing that, find allies, people that are willing to go and speak for your cause, and that truly understand what equity means. Somebody that can promote to get you the resources and the support to support the business case. Because those people in the boardrooms and those making those decisions, they understand the numbers, they understand money. So if you can tie the two together and go and show some statistics on how the companies that are doing very well and how it hits the bottom line and how if we had done this, we would be here, then that'll help move the needle.
Natasha, I would just say really quickly that, so I know we're running out of time, is we are all D&I practitioners. And if you're not, you might not be upholding your voice and supporting your own power. Because if it's just me and my small team doing it, if it's just our diversity and inclusion or just our HR partner doing it,
Right.
we're going to miss the mark all day long. And yes, we only measure what we want outcomes to be, but we have to make sure that all of us are pushing the needle. And when we see discrepancies or we see opportunity to raise our voice because that just didn't seem right, we have to be able to call out microaggressions. We are all responsible for that. And if we're not all carrying that responsibility, you are leaving a part of your power at the door.
That's right. Thank you. Thank you. I published a book this year called The Power of One, and that's exactly what it's about. We all can use our individual influence, to make ordinary people, they can make extraordinary changes in our workplaces, in our communities, one by one. And any grassroots effort will show us, and we've ever made change in our.
We're going to take a question as she's teeing up the
yes,
question.
Yeah, because we got to go. Thank you so much. Yes,
Great.
Go right ahead.
Good afternoon. Thank you for all your comments. I've really enjoyed them. My name is Sylvia. I'm with the Hispanic Association on Corporate Responsibility, and my question is about truth and reconciliation. So I'm wondering where that sits in your companies and your DE&I strategies and corporate awareness and education, thinking about all the public movements around renaming statues, the fight that we have to have in states like Florida or Texas around protecting just the right to be educated about what happened in history and the right to have a perspective that differs from white supremacist perspective. I'm just going to put that out there. So how do your companies sit with that, and do they, and is it a part of your strategy, is it a part of your empowerment campaign when you think about all of us are D&I practitioners? I love that. Where do we sit in truth and understanding the real history and the way that these our companies, Fortune 500 companies, have benefited from a lot of these privileged systems in this country, in these unequal systems? Thank you.
Well, Sylvia, hi, Asair. We love you guys. We know you guys just had your Empower Her Summit. We were there, but we do. We have courageous conversations, and we understand that everyone's position on truth is maybe not the same as how we all come to the table, but we understand facts are facts. But if something creates discomfort for people where they can't bring their whole self to work, we have discussions on it. So we hold courageous conversations. We uphold our employee networks to have discussions. We get behind bills when we think it's not going to support a significant part of our employee base, like the HB2 bathroom law, right? We stood against that. So we're like, no, we need our teammates to feel comfortable wherever they are, because if they're not bringing their whole self to work, that means we're leaving money on the table with our clients, we're not supporting each other, and we are going to not have the right investment for our communities.
Yep. Thank you. Next question.
Hi, Ellen Bailey, Vice President of Diversity and Culture at Harvard Business Review. And like many of you, I did this work for years before I actually got the official role. And because of implementing a lot of best practices that I learned from folks like y'all, we made leaps and bounds in the past couple of years, and I'm super proud about that, contrary to some of the negative press. And so I say all of that because we have made leaps and bounds in the past couple of years, and so then I've been asked to do a lot of webinars and panels and things like that. And what is surprising to me, since again I did this work for years before becoming having the official title, is I would say as of late in the past year, I continue to get pushback by all of the people that look like us that say, no way, not touching it with a 10-foot pole, want nothing to do with that diversity, equity, and inclusion work. I'm not standing up to anybody. I'm not having a voice. It's where you go to die. I don't want to, I don't want to rock the boat. And I have to be quite honest, it's taken me aback. Because Selma didn't happen for nothing, for us to sit here and for us to not use our voice. What advice do you have for me as I continue to get those questions, as I talk to audiences that look like us?
Aria?
Yeah, I say it all the time, leadership matters. And we all have a choice we can make every day around that, right? And so for me, when it's not that we don't have folks who, in our own minds, right, are willing to not stand up for their own interest, right? But my job is to make sure that it's a safe enough place that they can. And if you make the choice that you don't want to stand up, you don't want to share your perspective, I really cannot hear you when you have a problem, right? Because if I'm giving you a safe space, if it's been demonstrated that our organization is a safe space to bring that, right? I need everybody to bring their 100% self to work every day, whatever that 100% means to you. And so if you want to say, hey, got no dog in this fight. Isn't that what they say? Got no dog in this fight, right? That's great. You can't selectively then come back and decide that you've been wronged, right? You got to give a space for grace in that instance, but it's the people who are loud about not wanting to do that need to have our support to step back and say, okay, why? Is my space safe enough to do this work? Do you have people who support you in doing this work? If their answer is still, I don't want to do this, great, got it. Don't be a barrier though, right? Don't stop others.
Thank you.
You. And we have time for one more.
Alrighty. Good afternoon. My name is Rolanda Small. My pronouns are she and her, and I head up diversity and inclusion for Proofpoint, cybersecurity company. My question is, and I'm looking for this advice, and hopefully you'll share this with everyone. We know that a lot of companies are willing to put money in and support new grads. They're not threatened by bringing in Black people at the lowest level. But what are you doing in your organizations, in your industry, to help ensure that we're bringing in Black people and other underrepresented minorities at the senior manager, VP, directors, all those levels that can then empower others to be able to hire and bring us more in and higher numbers? So just looking for some advice and support.
Well, we fill the funnel, but we also have to close the bucket, right? We want to make sure that it doesn't leak. So not only do we want to bring you in, we work with about 600 institutions, HBCUs, HSIs, et cetera, to not only attract talent, but we know that the pace of change is like this, right? Last 30 years, it's like that. So not only once we hire them, we know that we have to continue to train, because if we're going to keep up with how society moves, then we have to make sure that we train them. So we have an academy that has about 1,000 people in it that are just there to help our employees be better at what they do every day. And that is all of our teammates, so that they can be a practitioner of their work. And not only so do we bring them in, but we want to promote, because again, our objective is to make sure that we look like the communities and clients we serve at all levels of the organization. You gotta bring them in, you gotta support them, you gotta train them, and you gotta help them come through the pipeline.
And I just want to add to that, not only that, but the Black woman is the most educated demographic in the United States of America.
Right.
And any organization that is telling you they cannot find Black women who are qualified and ready for leadership positions are lying to you.
That's right.
They are not looking in the right places. They are not creating opportunities. I agree with what you say. We've got to also promote, but there are people who are willing and ready and able and educated for right now.
Right now.
I'd like to add to that as well, because when we talk about the efforts that you're making and the courage for those of us that are in these spaces, we have to be able to speak up, and you have to think about, how did you get here? Because they'll say every day, and you have to challenge that. And I'm not saying being so negative or whatever, but you have to have that conversation. And because you will be questioned about, oh, well, you hired this person and I didn't, but you can have an all-white male staff, but question the one Black, overly qualified person that I've hired, or the Hispanic or whatever. So you have to have those conversations when you're in that space and be able to make those efforts, because we wouldn't be in these spaces if people didn't do the things, sitting at the back of the bus, getting beat and all that. We've got to make that mean something.
That's right, that's right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Are we going to allow, oh, they're giving us more time. All right, one more question.
Hi, I'm Carol Lockhart, and I'm a vice president at Merrill Lynch, and I work with new advisors at Merrill Lynch. My question is we always talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and we kind of forget the equity part and what it really means. What are your companies doing to actually give people equity in the company that makes them want to be more a part of the growth and the stability of the company?
So I can start real quick, but my answer is not going to be what you're looking for, right? So the advisor world is very different than our not-for-profit regulatory space. We don't have equity to give people. We don't have shares to give people. Like, we have nothing to give people in that space, right? So when we talk about equity, it really is the experience, right? Ensuring that there is a fair and level playing field for everyone in our organization. And as a regulator, right, of the broker-dealer world, I understand that the business models are very different, but I can't speak on that, so I'm gonna let other people speak.
Hi, Carol. So a lot of the work that we do is making sure that people can bring their voices, right, that they're heard, right, and that they are in safe places to speak up. And I think one of the things I think about all the time is that is, for us as women of color, it's always our burden to share our own burden, like to remediate it. It has to be the burden of more than just us. And if you don't feel that you're comfortable and can speak up, and can you bring an ally to the table with you, or can you help share what your thoughts are to a person that can help to raise those opportunities? And so we have mentor programs. We encourage everyone to have a sponsor, so which is very different than a mentor, right? A mentor is someone who will coach you in private, and a sponsor is someone who will praise you in public and attach their name to yours. So making sure that you can be represented in places where maybe you're not at the table. So I think having and participating in our employee networks, participating in the programs like this and initiatives that provide opportunities for our diverse talent, I think helps to drive that equity, and having a voice at the table. And if you don't feel comfortable having that voice at the table, bringing an ally with you.
I guess I talked enough and it's okay. Recognizing and understanding cultural differences and making them matter in the workplace.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, first of all, thank you so much for taking the time to come and hear today. And I hope that you walk away from this conversation with the optimism and hope that you need to continue to use your voice for change. And I also want to encourage you as Black women, because my friend, you know, she talked about being the one and the only oftentimes in rooms. And as you find yourself making your way up the ladders and the hierarchies at your organizations, you will, if you haven't already found yourself, will find yourself as being the one, the only. I've been there. And I remember in my early days in my career growing up in LA, Lower Alabama, and that was my first time being the one and only. And there was only one other person that looked like me in the whole organization. That happened to be a law firm full of white men. And we were afraid to support each other. We barely spoke to each other. Because we thought, well, what would they say if they see us whispering in the break room? What will they say if I say her name in the room? They're organized, they're doing this, they're doing that. And I regret that to this day. As we make it up and obtain positions with decision-making authority, positions of influence, we have to make space for each other. For too long, we have relied on policies, we have relied on the passage of laws, we have relied on organizational leaders to make space for us. We need to make space for each other and ourselves. We need to use our voice, we need to use our influence, we need to use our power and whatever that is, because we are what? What is the name of this conference? Women of Power. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a good rest of the conference. And they have to use this.